So for those of you who are going to tweet, I'll give you a quick hashtag. We'll come back to that later during the musical reflection. If you have questions, that's the hashtag to use, and my understanding is you just tweet hashtag MV Border and then your question, which has to be 140 characters or less, which is my favorite part of this exercise. And then I'll get them over the course of the musical reflection, and I'll address some of them during the second reflection. The Baja Four ministers and our spouses were privileged to be able to participate in a border immersion experience. Can you actually, Lisa, can I get you to dim the lights up here so that they can see better? Okay, thanks, Chuck. And so this was a 2-day immersive experience where we toured the countryside, the outback, and we saw some memorial crosses. We went to an aid station. We went to a place called Las Alitas, which is a house that helps people after they've crossed the border get to their next place. We witnessed a streamlined sentencing hearing. We went to a place in Nogales, Mexico called La Comedor, which was a place where migrants could get a meal or a few meals. We visited a graveyard where the Mexican authorities had put concertina wire around the top of it so that migrants would not be able to sleep in it. I don't know what the thinking was there, that they don't need sleep. We visited an institution, a place called Grupo Beta, which is an operation of the Mexican government that is designed to aid and rescue migrants who are in trouble, as well as provide protection for their rights, particularly and almost exclusively Mexican immigrants. Their jurisdiction does not extend to helping Central American and South American immigrants as much. We spoke with some young men who were in transit. We visited a shelter for Central American migrants, and we witnessed a memorial at the place of an assassination. That was our agenda. So I just want you to begin to know what it is that we did, because I'm not going to talk about all of those things right now. This is a picture of a woman named Shura. She is probably the best person I will ever meet. She is holding a map where I don't know if you can see, but it is covered like a pox with red dots. Those are the places within a very recent time period where they have found human remains. That's not Arizona. That is a small part of Arizona. And in fact, I think Nogales is here. And this is Sasabe. Here's a ring, and here's a ring, and here's a ring, and these represent days' walk. And these are all the remains that have been found. And what was pointed out to us, emphasized to us, was those are the remains that have been found. There are likely, many more that haven't been found. This woman, this is a picture at the La Comedor, which is where migrants who are either being deported back or attempting to come back into the States can go for a meal to get some clothes and some hydration and some rest, maybe some community. This woman, they line up, and it's a line that stretches down the street, and this was a Saturday, and this is every day that these people are lined up. By the time we left, they were 50 deep. They serve 2 meals here a day, and this woman walks up to complete strangers as though she knows them and somehow is known. She does it with joy in her heart. She touches people physically and comforts them. She informs them that and tries to dispel any misinformation that they might have. As you know, many immigrants come up thinking that it's a one-day walk to Tucson from Nogales, and it's a 6 to 7 day walk. So these people prepare for a one-day walk. So she always asks them and makes sure that they know how far they have to go. She is recognized everywhere we went. She was recognized by officials, by aid workers, by immigrants themselves. She is known, and if she's not known, she makes herself immediately known. She is an amazing person and carries so much pain in her heart, but you would never know it because she goes about her work with such joy. And I don't know, she made a joke that she was in 2 places at once, which is she didn't make the joke thinking that it was a qualification for sainthood, but that is immediately went off in my mind because she is an absolute exemplar of the best of us. So if you could go ahead and flip it, Ricky. These are more pictures of the comedor. That's people preparing the food, and go ahead and flip it again. The men and the women eat separately from one another. They're very careful about keeping the sexes separate because it is very, very dangerous for women on the immigrant trail. I should have given some trigger warnings at the beginning of this. I apologize. But we're going to be talking about some very tough stuff. And when the woman embarks on the migrant trail, it's almost a certainty, they say, that she's going to be sexually assaulted. What's more is that information is not secret. It's not surprising to people who are considering embarking on that journey. Go ahead and flip it. This is one of the crosses that we were taken to. Oftentimes they become memorials, and much like any memorial, people leave artifacts here. You can't really tell because it's just not that great of a photo, but there are little toys all over the place, which should give you some indication of whose memorial this is. It's actually the memorial of a newborn baby whose remains were discovered at that spot. So now you can imagine yourself as a pregnant woman in Honduras or El Salvador or Chiapas. You know that you're probably, even though you're pregnant, likely going to be assaulted on the way to America. And you still come. It's not because you are illusioned about something. It's because that life where you are cannot be had. And so you risk everything to come north. So this woman had her baby at the side of the road. This was 3 feet from the road. And it was stillborn or died immediately after birth, and she left it there. What are you to do? There was another cross that we saw, again, 4 feet away from the road. And I was thinking, God, these people, what? They're 4 feet away from the road. Is the fear of getting caught so great that they won't go to the side of the road and wave their hand and flag down a car? And I guess, you could be delirious out of food, out of water, and not even know. I mean, it's possible at that point to not even know that you're that close to a road. But I also think that the fear is that great for some people. And in a probably delirious state of mind, the choice is made to not seek help. And so they perish. They oftentimes comes with tortilla cloths around their food. And the tortilla cloths become one of the prominent things that you find in the desert. And to sort of bookend a mother losing her child in transit, there was, in a slideshow that we saw, a tortilla cloth that was embroidered in Spanish, but I'll say it in English. It was embroidered for mama. So these people are leaving their families in order to protect their families from either economic destitution or from real violence. In El Salvador and Honduras, evidently right now, it is a terribly violent place to live. So they risk everything. And they are human beings. They're not fools. They are doing it knowing that there is a tremendous risk ahead of them, but that risk is worth more than the life that they are living right now. So if you could flip to the next thing, Ricky. This is the Arivaca Humanitarian Aid Office. Here we saw another hero named Carlotta, who herself is an immigrant, and she lives in this area. There's a lot of migrant traffic in this area. She has migrants come to her door from time to time. A number of the people in this area of Arizona do. Some of them are welcoming to immigrants. Many of them are welcoming to immigrants. And they are able to call this humanitarian aid station because, you might not be equipped to or ready to house an immigrant. You might be able to give them some food and water and then turn them over to the Arivaca Humanitarian Office, who can help them further. And this woman, at the end of our time talking with her, she said, "I just pray every day that God send me to someone who needs my help. I'm not here for long. What else can I do? I'm not afraid of anything, and I can sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, I do the same thing again." So she's saving lives every day. Carlotta. And then go ahead and flip it. For me, this was the most this summarized the pinnacle and represented the pinnacle of evil that is occurring because of our current immigration policies, right? Which we vote for the people who create those policies. Here is a memorial for Jose Antonio Elena Rodriguez. This is on a street in Nogales that from which you can see the border wall. Go ahead and flip it, Ricky, if you would. So that's from the other side of the street. That is Jose Antonio. He was 16 years old when he threw a rock, allegedly threw a rock at a Border Patrol agent, a U.S. Border Patrol agent on the other side of the wall. So Jose is in Nogales, Mexico, throws a rock, allegedly. Now, these poles up here are about this far apart.
It's like 2 inches.
Yeah, okay, like this far apart. They're this big around, and they're this far apart. And Ricky didn't. Jose threw the rock. Evidently, it hit a Border Patrol, or not evidently, allegedly it hit a Border Patrol. And that Border Patrol agent shot Jose 8 times. From our side of the border into Mexico at a 16-year-old kid who was throwing stones. Now, what's going on here to me is this is just a culmination of fear that is being perpetuated from Honduras to Buffalo. And it reached its apex here. The people are coming because they're afraid of their situation where they are. The Border Patrol, that community, now look, not all Border Patrol are bad people, right? Obviously. And they do a lot of good. They save a lot of lives as well. But it's a system and it's a enforcement agency that one of the agents told a Samaritan that everybody is a suspect. Everybody is suspicious, right? And then this poor Border Patrol officer had, I don't know, he snapped because of the pressures. I would describe it to the pressures of fear. And he killed a 16-year-old boy. I don't know if I included, can you go one more slide? That's the camera. You know, they've got cameras all along the border. This camera looks right down on the street where Jose was killed. They have not released the footage of the assassination, which means that they have the footage. This, by the way, will go to trial, and tomorrow they will decide where they are holding the trial, which county, either Santa Cruz or Pima.
The trial of the border agent?
The trial of the border agent, yes.
That's significant.
Yeah, if they hold it in Pima County, the ACLU can be involved. And I don't know why, but if they hold it in Santa Cruz County, which is the county in which it occurred, then the ACLU cannot be involved. But I don't know, it's obviously something to do with jurisdiction, and it seems like it's a federal agency. It's an international incident. Seems like the federal courthouse in Pima County is the place to have it. And for Jose's sake and the sake of his family, I think we should hope that that is the case. One of the things that Shura always said, so you hear the border agent say, everyone's a suspect. On the other side of that, Shura says, you never know who's watching. She's had occasion to in one moment be, talking with a migrant, and then who's, or not even a migrant, but somebody that she's just helping in Mexico, and she suspects this person was disappeared by one of the cartels. There are people who watch At La Comidor, they're called it's assassin. It's the Mexican word for assassin. They watch young men, single young men, come out of the comedor. They walk down to them and they say, "Hey, where are you from?" And they tell them where they're from. They say, "Oh, my cousin's from there. What's your name?" And they find out some information. Then they kidnap the guy, and with that information, call home and demand ransom. We talked to some people who were coming up from Honduras, 2 young men, when we were at Grupo Veda, and they had ridden the train up. When you ride the train up, the tops of the train are owned by the cartels, and they threaten people. They throw them off. They cut off people's fingers to extort them or their families for money. And these 2 young men, one of whom was coming back to his family in Houston, they had been threatened at gunpoint, and the guy pulled the trigger, and the gun malfunctioned, and they ran. So this is happening right in our backyard. Right in our backyard. So I'll leave you to think about that for a little bit, and I'll read your tweets. Okay, so what you do is you go to tweet, and then you type in hashtag MV border, and then your question. So we're learning. So one question is, what is the moral cost of our unwillingness to look at the people coming north? And, the moral cost is the least of the costs. The primary cost is life and relationships. And we cannot underestimate, you can hardly imagine, and if you imagine, it would break your heart. To think of being separated from your family, from my girls, to think of being separated, yeah, I would come back no matter what. There is nothing that would keep me, and I would risk getting on the train, and I would risk walking through the desert. So the moral cost is immense. It is, I think, but it's so immense. I mean, I can't even imagine. I think it's probably akin to the moral cost of slavery in that it's rotting our country. And it is engendering and enabling fear to have political license, which results ultimately in the death of Jose, right? Now for us, what is the cost of not doing it? We are extremely privileged to be born in this country, to be living in this country, and to not have to really confront that very often. And I think the moral cost of it to you personally could be nothing, because you live in ignorance of evil. So I think the cost starts to come in when we pay attention. So it's a cost that we want. It's not. Okay. So we just are seeing testimonies of seeing graves on the roadside on the way to Arivaca. And where do we ease this situation? Actually, we don't want to move too quickly into fix-it solutions, but I asked the kids this very question this morning because I felt overwhelmed and I did not know how we ease this situation. And I think that they did offer us some wisdom. I think you do have to sit in it for a while. You have to educate yourself, find yourself in the pain and sit in the pain, and ask other people for help. Ask other people where you can help. And in fact, there are places to help. The Las Alitas needs volunteers, and I can hook you up with them. They're in Tucson. The Samaritans always could use help, both clothing and boots on the ground, and I could help you connect with them. And the Comedor needs clothing, shoes, coats, and blankets. I think a lot, especially blankets, but we could ask them. So there are places we can go to actually do some help. And of course, you know, this all starts with policy. And so you can vote, and you can get your friends to vote. And then you could make me pay attention is another place. Keep me focused. I'll just do, does Border Patrol harass the Comedor and Arivaca aid station? Comedor is in Nogales, so in Mexico, so they don't have any jurisdiction in Nogales, Mexico. The Comedor people are harassed by the cartels, who are very much embedded with the local Nogales police and army. Shura was testified to this. I don't know, I don't have any verification outside of Shura, but she said that most of the disappearances in Mexico are the army is responsible for that. So can you imagine living in a country where your army was responsible for disappearing more citizens in crime, right? And as to Arivaca, there is a sign on the door that says Border Patrol is not permitted in this building without a search warrant. So I imagine that sometimes they are harassed. And some, you know, Samaritans, we heard stories of some people encountering Border Patrol and them working cooperatively together, seeing each other's humanity, and noting that only together are they going to be a benefit. And of course, then you also heard the testimony about a Border Patrol agent saying everyone's a suspect and referring to the Samaritan as you people, right? So it's complex, not monolithic. So I thank you for paying attention today. Keep paying attention. Keep me paying attention. Send me emails if you want to volunteer for these places. Go to Justice DA. There will be opportunities for you to do similar things at Justice District Assembly. And